All right. Good morning, Doug. We're here today to talk about some of the things that could possibly go wrong in the next 6 months, and there's a lot of them. And you have your list, I have mine, and we'll go through it. And I don't know what yours are. I think you know what some of mine are. But first, we want to talk about the fact that you, congratulations, I guess, are due. You've been deplatformed.
Long overdue.
I
Congratulations.
can't believe it took this long.
Yeah, Mona at internationalman.com told me, well, not verbally, but by email, brief email, that International Man has been kicked off of Facebook.
And her personal account as well, is what I thought she said.
Wow, that's...
I thought that's what she said in the email.
Because I think that's what she said. I'll check it out, but that quite amazes me because her name does not occur anywhere, so they would have had to have done a little bit of research.
Maybe she was constantly sharing these really outrageous articles that you were posting.
Well, I haven't been on my Facebook account basically since I opened it up. And what I did with my Facebook account was I gave it to Mona. I had, at the time, around 6,000 or 7,000 people that wanted to be my friend, and I said, sure. Like Mr. Rogers, yeah, you can be my friend. So I checked yes on all of them, but I don't like to communicate. I did not like to communicate on Facebook, and so I gave it to Mona to manage as a business instrument. Yeah. So maybe that's how it happened.
Okay, well, but it happened, and basically we don't know the exact cause because it's no explanation. No, but it was said it was a permanent ban, and in that article, though, you said, I mean, there was a lot of heresy, so it could have, who knows which one it was.
Well, I know Mona sent it to me because, well, she thinks. I don't know if they told her this was... Anyway, anybody that would like the really offensive article, we'll be happy to send it to them.
I'll link it to it in the description of this video.
Absolutely.
And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
It didn't seem like it was bad at all, but, you know, it wasn't any worse than the content of these videos.
I thought I was just stating the obvious, but somehow their algorithm or their fact checkers or somebody...
didn't like it.
Decided that, yeah.
Which basically means it is literally and only a matter of time before it happens with this channel, because there isn't anything that's been said that article said that hasn't been said many times in these videos. So it's only a matter of time.
I hope that Facebook deplatforms everybody and goes out of business.
That would be nice.
It would be wonderful.
It would be nice. So if you like these videos at all, I would strongly encourage you to do a couple of things. One, in the description, sign up for our email list so that you can be notified if we get deplatformed, and we can tell you where you can still get these videos, because we'll keep producing them, but if we can't put them on YouTube, then you won't be able to find us there. So sign up for our email list and we'll let you know. Link for that is in this video. The other thing is that we have a Telegram group. So if you use Telegram at all, go and join the Telegram group because we can publish there. We also have a channel, third and final one I'll tell you about is we have a channel on Odyssey, which we've only got like 2,000 followers there, and maybe every video might have a couple hundred views or maybe up to 300, but that platform is not something that they can censor. So there are a lot of other ones out there. People say, why aren't you on Rumble or why aren't you on BitChute? Those are fine for now, but they are all censorable in the future. So it's only a matter of time. So I think, but Odyssey is okay.
Is it hard to get on those things? Because frankly, I have a love-hate relationship with my computer. And I generally just use it as a blunt instrument. So if there are other people out there like me that just use the most obvious and stupid things like Skype and Zoom and so forth, how do you get on these things?
Well, Telegram is an app you can download for your phone and on your computer, and basically it's a messaging app like Skype essentially, but it can be, but you can do it there can be channels. So it can be, you can have tens of thousands of people in a single channel, which means it essentially allows us to share our videos with everybody who follows us there at one time. And it also allows for discussion and interaction between people. So that's pretty easy to do, and I can get you set up with that. You might not, it can be overwhelming, honestly, but I mean, when you get into the channel, there's so much feedback and forth.
Time on my computer.
Then maybe I won't say over there. But if you want to make sure you don't lose contact with us, this is a good way to do it. The other thing is that Odyssey, email obviously is easy, so joining the email list is a no-brainer. You also get some special reports, including some of our predictions and some of your stock picks, and so encourage you to sign up for that. But Odyssey is, you just go to odyssey.com, just like you go to youtube.com, and the videos stream from there. So in any case, if you like hearing from us and you want to make sure you continue to hear from us, you really need to connect with us on some of these platforms we have better control over because it is only a matter of time. It could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be next year, but it's going to happen eventually.
And of course, if enough people go to these other channels, I'm sure Microsoft or Google or Facebook or somebody will give the owners of those channels an offer they can't refuse, namely a lot of money, and they'll disappear into the maw of the beast as well.
Probably. There's a good thing about Odyssey, though. It's blockchain based.
Oh.
So it's you can't take it down. It can't be taken down. Now, they could be blocked by, different web browsers and things like that, theoretically, but that's a whole other level. So,
well, I'm sure when we develop Paladin Coin, we'll do at least as well as they do.
Yeah, I think we will. Okay, so we want to talk today about,
But wait, there's something else. Do you know that today is Indigenous Peoples Day?
I didn't know that. Wow, that's important news.
AKA Columbus Day, but Columbus has been deplatformed. So, he's an evil mass murderer and misogynist and racist and all the rest of this type of thing. So it's Indigenous Peoples Day today.
Is that because the kids aren't in school here in Uruguay? Do they celebrate it as Indigenous people, or do they celebrate it as Columbus Day?
Wait a minute. Why aren't kids in school in Uruguay?
Well, that's just what your wife told me. Yeah.
Is that
I don't want to name more names, but
oh,
yeah.
Let me see. Gee, that I'll have to find out about that. Well, I'm glad to hear it, of course, but I didn't. I was unaware of it.
All right. So we want to talk about some things that we think could. There's a decent chance these unfortunate outcomes could occur in the next 6 months.
Okay.
And do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
Well, you go first, because I think mine are going to be kind of conventional and obvious, probably to. So I think when you were touching on some of these the other day, they sounded a lot more interesting than what's
I doubt it. But okay, so one of them is the inspired by our friend Giant, who joined us on the show before. The march to making the first world the third world will continue on, and over the next 6 months, and it'll be obvious in a couple of ways. One, murder rates were up in the U.S. 30% last year, which is the most ever recorded since the FBI has been collecting crime statistics. So I think that trend will only continue. You have police officers who obviously are afraid to do their job, which isn't a bad thing necessarily.
No.
You also have police officer forces being shrunk because of people unwilling to take the vaccine and people just exiting the field. So, I just think it's inevitable that the crime is going to go up. Our tolerance for crime has gone up a lot, with shoplifting being okay and obviously murder rates skyrocketing. So I think that's going to get worse, more like a third world country.
Well, touching on what you just said, the question arises, is it supply chain break, or is it some other reason why a lot of stores in cities are shown as having empty shelves? And it's been suggested to me that those shelves are empty in the cities because those stores want to go out of business without doing an actual fire sale. So why stock your shelves when anybody can come in and steal up to $900 worth without fear of prosecution?
Well, I think in cities like San Francisco, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, those businesses are going to go bankrupt there one way or another. So it doesn't make sense to restock the inventory.
No, it doesn't.
But there are some other supply chain problems, and that's another one I have. Actually, I guess it's technically under the same category. Is that I think shortages will enter the zeitgeist to such a degree that they will be. We'll see the word in news articles in the same way that we currently see cases for COVID.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. And of course, cases for COVID, I always thought was quite misleading, because a case can be something from just almost like a mild common cold, but you have COVID, to, what. So these things are never defined. They're never accurately reported. Cases for COVID, actually more or less a meaningless term, especially since the testing mechanism is unreliable.
But shortages will be real. People will start to notice what has gone basically unnoticed so far. People have started to notice that there aren't cars on dealer lots. They've started to notice stuff like that. But I think, by the time Christmas comes around and they expect to do their Black Friday shopping in Walmart, where they break through the doors and load up the carts like crazy. There's not going to be the same stock in those stores that there has been in years past. And I think, people are going to not have the same food choices that they've had. And I think they're just going to recognize that there's shortages. And of course, with shortages, prices are going to go way up on the things that are available.
Yeah, okay. So I'll buy that. Perhaps we can track on Google, I understand this can be done, the frequency of the use of words in certain areas.
That's a good one, yeah.
We can see how often the word shortage, what the trend on the use of that word is.
Yeah. I'll look in Google Trends for that, and actually we'll be able to measure whether or not I'm correct.
Okay. I don't know how to do it, but I know
do.
it can be done.
Yeah,
okay.
I could do that.
It's good. This is what we call synergy.
It is, exactly. All right, so I have one other thing about this, the third world march. So shortages are part of the third world. Crime is part of the third world, but I also think I think there's a distinct possibility that this winter there are going to be outages, and whether they be brownouts or blackouts in the U.S. I think we're going to see it this winter. I mean, right now we have the heating oil, which heats most of about 5 million New England homes anyway, but it's at lowest stocks since 2000. There's only 31 days of stock available right now, and that's at any price. There's only 31 days available. So, and 23% of utilities are in the process of switching from clean burning natural gas to coal because they're anticipating shortages of natural gas. And of course, there's going to be shortages of coal as well. I mean, there already are.
Well, I'm long natural gas, which is still much cheaper in the U.S. than it is in Europe. Natural gas in Europe is about $15. Here in the U.S., it's still around $5.
But what was the peak natural gas? Wasn't it like 16?
Yeah, it was something like that. It's one of those commodities that does tend to fluctuate a lot. It's been as low as just from memory, $1.50 to as high as 16. It fluctuates radically.
It's a rocket though when it moves.
It is. So, the only hesitation I have about being long more natural gas is that everybody is kind of hip to the fact there's a shortage. It's not like it's going to arrive as a black swan. Everybody has seen this swan circling for some time. So,
but I think people are still underestimating how bad it's going to be. Especially, I like coal. You can't trade coal. You can't buy futures on coal.
You can't. It's about tripled in price from the commodity from what it was. Yeah. $50 a ton to I think $150 a ton. But interestingly, coal stocks. One that I missed was Peabody Coal,
which is the biggest straight play there is in the U.S., right?
Yeah, big, well-known company. Yes, absolutely. It's gone up 10 times in the last year. But there are a lot of other coal companies elsewhere in the world that are down 90 or 95% or more from their previous peaks of 5, 6, 7 years ago, and are selling for 4 times earnings. And they're still bouncing along on the bottom. So this market might have more to run.
I did buy a little Peabody, and I also bought a little Natural Resource Partners. I don't know if you know those guys or not, but they have it's US based, but they have a 7% dividend also.
Oh, that's attractive.
Yeah. So anyway, but not to say I'm recommending those stocks, because if we were, we would charge people for that.
Yeah.
But we don't do that.
Well, and I don't want to be an investment advisor. No. Because the problem with telling people what to do with their money, and I know I've done lots of this over the years, is that whether I'm right or wrong, most people will be guided by their emotions and their psychology and wind up losing money. They'll hold it too long, or they'll
not hold long enough.
Yeah, something will go wrong. So,
or they'll buy too much of it.
I'd rather make kind of general statements and phrase it the way drug companies do when they recommend a drug. It's
you knew the 8-page disclaimer.
Yeah, but I would sum up that 8-page disclaimer with just one sentence, basically. This drug can definitely fuck you up. Ask your doctor if this shit is right for you. And they should say that after every drug. And maybe that would catch people's attention.
Right, because
your eyes glaze over. Yeah, it's probably going to kill me, but say it more succinctly.
This drug could fuck you up. This investment recommendation could fuck you up. All right. So that's my first one though, is that these third world, a march to the third world, giant style. That's my big one for the next 6 months.
Yes, and the third world, I mean, I've spent a lot of time hanging around the third world because it's weird and it's exotic and there's all kinds of things. But for instance, Haiti, a country I'm pretty familiar with because I've been going to Haiti since about 1970. I promise that's a lot longer than most people have been going there. And I've noticed radical changes in Haiti over the time. But one news item that I just read is that Haiti has replaced Mexico City and Bogota and Rio as the kidnapping capital of the world.
Wow.
It's become like a major industry in Port-au-Prince now. If you find somebody that looks like he might be profitable to kidnap, you kidnap him. And that's a great way to generate money.
Wow.
In fact, it's probably a major source of foreign exchange for Haiti at this point. So I don't recommend people go to Haiti anymore. The last time I was there was 4 years ago. But no, not now.
No. Haitians are coming here though.
Yeah. By the truckload.
There's a 60,000 member caravan on the way up, is what I heard.
With many Haitians.
Yeah.
That, not that life is bad in places like Chile and the rest of South America and that, but it's better in the U.S. I mean, once you get in, you get all these wonderful freebies. I mean, yeah.
Someone in our Telegram group, Uruguayan, who lives in Montevideo, said that the former president brought in some Syrians, refugees to Uruguay, and they hated it and it demanded to be sent back because it was so expensive here.
Oh, that's right. So, these were the 4 guys that were released from Guantanamo, I believe.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm not sure if it's the same group, but yes, they were all transplanted to Uruguay, and none of them are here anymore.
I mean, you gotta like it when they just go, well, there's easier prey for us, so we're going somewhere else.
Exactly.
That's a good thing. Okay. So, third world. What do you got? What's one of your predictions for the next 6 months of what could possibly go wrong?
Well, my predictions, the ones I've got here aren't that interesting. Quite frankly, we've talked about so many of these things with what could happen with World War III and riots and if we have something resembling a coup in Washington, because the Biden administration has just gotten started. Really, I mean, they've only been in office since January, 8 months or something like 9 months at this point, but they have 3.25 years to go, and Biden will be able to appoint hundreds of federal judges. I think there are 200 vacancies right now that he can fill, mucho pronto, but he hasn't done it yet. And lots of high offices. So they've just barely gotten started with filling the U.S. government with communists and people of that nature. So the question becomes, what's the consequences of that going to be? They're definitely going to create chaos. And are there people out there that are planning a coup? It's all these Trumpers that were so enthusiastic and so certain and are now so pissed off. Not just this January 6th thing, which is a scandal. And I don't mean the fact that a bunch of people entered the Capitol. They shouldn't have because the doors were locked or closed. But the fact that the government is accusing them of being terrorists and the fact that, the FBI is now investigating school boards for being pissed off at school board members who are usually just horrible people.
Yep.
So at some point, is it possible we'll have a coup, a 7 days in May, type thing from that novel in the 60s and a movie in the 60s by the same name. Is that possible? Well, all these things are possible today because we're looking at chaos. We're looking at absolute chaos. But yeah, migration is going to continue.
Yeah.
So, lots and lots of people are going to cross the southern border, and then the U.S. government is going to figure out what to do with these people, where to ship them, how to feed them. Because if you don't feed them, I mean, it's considered to be unseemly for people to starve in the streets. So, that's not going to change. And it could be that migration ramps up once again to Europe because you got to remember, commodity prices now are pushing the levels that they were back
spring. Exactly.
And, these poor Arabs can't afford these things. So what do? They riot. Food prices are high, therefore go into the street and destroy things and try to change the government for somebody even more stupid than...
And the more ambitious ones migrate to Europe.
Absolutely. So that could happen again. I mean, you could easily find another column of 1 million refugees marching through, and anything could happen. But I was thinking mainly about practical things like the stock market, and seeing the way civilization has been declining. Actually, while the standard of living has been going up for reasons that, well, here's a good one. This year is going to be the largest drain of dollars from the U.S. to foreign countries, import deficit, in other words, in history. It's on track for being something like $850 billion. Wow. So our major export in the U.S. is not wheat or soybeans or Boeings, it's dollars. And it's a great trade. You ship these foreigners nice dollars, which they all want. They get the paper, and we get the Mercedes and the Sonys and the cocaine and other things that foreigners send us. But now it's gotten really, really big. So at what point is the dollar going to roll over? I'm just wondering.
Doesn't it make it worse that other central banks around the world have started to stop printing money? Like the Bank of Japan stopped after doing it once they stopped it once Abe left office. It's the Abenomics or Abenomics or whatever you call it are done.
That's interesting. So the Central Bank of Japan is no longer inflating the currency the way they once did.
That's right. And other central banks have started to raise rates, including Poland, New Zealand, Korea, Iceland, and Norway. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, and at some point, as inflation gets higher in reported numbers and in actuality, which it is, it's going to go much, much higher. I mean, bondholders are not going to accept getting 1% on their money while their capital is being eroded at 10 or 15% per year. You can't trust the U.S. government reported numbers anymore, much more than you can trust the Argentine government's reported numbers at this point.
See, it was this movement of these other central banks, especially Japan, which made me think, I think rates are going to start going up. I think we're just going to start seeing it. Finally.
Yeah, it's one of my, have I ever told my favorite joke about Einstein?
Yeah.
Well, okay, everybody's heard that joke. So I hate to guess the direction of interest rates because they've been going down. They've overreacted.
Yeah.
Down. Are we going to go to negative interest rates in the U.S.? Well, with these lunatics in Washington, anything is possible. But at this point, I'm thinking about going short bonds on the futures market, or at least selling naked calls against bonds. That might work out. And I will say, just this very morning, I sold some naked puts on silver. Got a very good premium. Nearby puts in time. I think these things expire October 22nd. Here we are on October 11th. So if in the next 11 days silver does not fall by more than 70 cents, I will collect $1,000 per contract. So I think the odds, time is on my side, I think. I don't think silver is going to fall by that much, certainly not in that period of time. The other thing I did was I did a bear spread on the S&P 500. What were the exact numbers? Anyway,
We should be charging you for this, by the way.
well, these are just tips, things to watch, things to watch, but this is not actionable, tradable information. Why not? Because first of all, it's hard to open a commodities account now.
True. Yeah.
I mean, you've got to jump through some hoops and show.
But some people have them already.
Some people have the net worth, but most people have not traded commodities, and
they shouldn't.
They shouldn't, because if you trade commodities without a lot of experience, it's like giving a chainsaw to a 6-year-old. Not a good idea.
I had that chainsaw at one point, and it was bloody. It was really bloody. So I agree.
Anyway, what I've done is a bear spread, so that it cost me $1,000 to do the bear spread, and then to pay for the bear spread, because I hate buying options, because once again, time is your enemy when you're buying options. I rather sell options where time is on your side. So what I did is the bear spread for big upside, if the market goes down considerably in between now and March, but I sold a naked call which expires, about a month out, and collected enough premium from selling the call to pay for the big upside potential of buying the bear spread. Anyway, people can call me on this. I may have to, saying this in public, this is not an investment recommendation. I'm just telling you what I'm doing, but I may have to eat my words with a fork and spoon.
Well, so you can't win them all. It's like predictions. We have to make a lot of them.
Exactly. You're playing. You may be wrong 55 out of 100 times, but if the times that you're right, if the hit is big enough, you can be right 98 times out of 100. As long as the 2 times you're right, you make a lot of money on those 2 things.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, that's good. So the markets your prediction about what could possibly go wrong here. Do you have?
Anyway, the prediction.
Markets.
I think the market is rolling over, and of course, I thought it should have rolled over for a long time. I mean, we've been in bubble territory for a long time, but it's like one thing after another. And as we speak, the price earnings ratio of the stock market, well, it's not as absurd as it was back in the internet bubble days of 2000, but it's pretty absurd. And so I'm saying, well, price to sales ratio of corporations, 3 to 1 roughly, and at bear market bottoms, it's typically like 1 to 1. So what happens if the stock market goes down? I mean, all these Robinhood guys are going to lose their shirts.
Well, especially knowing there's so much leverage out there. I wonder what the margin is on, what margin exposure is. 'Cause I haven't
exactly right. There's about $1 trillion of margin exposure now, highest level in history.
See, that's scary.
It is scary, because once all these people are long, and once the market starts going down, they got to sell stuff to meet the margin calls, and things go down lower. And then you got to sell more stuff to meet the margin calls.
Right.
So at the top of the market, which I would suggest it is pretty close to the top of the market, or a very expensive market. So when you got a lot of margin, which has driven the market to these levels, you could be looking at a waterfall going down. So that's another point. It's the huge margin call. Oh, and of course, we mentioned this in the past, but it's now there's more option trading than there is stock trading. I mean, it's not like the stock market isn't leveraged enough with all these crazy stocks out there. Right. No, you got to buy options on the stocks where time is against you.
And you buy options on margin.
Yeah, I feel like I'm being prudent being short the stock market right now, because if the stock market goes down, then other bad stuff is going to happen.
Yeah.
Pension funds are going to go bankrupt and all the rest of it. But that's not even as bad as the bond market, because interest rates are still about at all-time lows in the United States. They're still negative in some countries in Europe. And I made a couple notes here. A little news item that came up the other day that I thought was interesting. It's that this year, public corporations have borrowed about some publication. Some corporations have borrowed $75 billion to pay their dividends. And borrowing money to pay a dividend is actually more or less insane. It's because, anyway, that's another thing, another indication of the top of the market. And, so that's a lot of bonds today are junk. And there's not much spread between the best rated bonds and the crappiest junk bonds. Why? Because people that want yield often buy bonds. And what kind of bonds pay the highest yield? Crappy bonds from crappy companies that are like the Volkswagen bonds.
For a reason, yeah.
So it's all quite distorted. And when we have a financial collapse, it's going to be really inconvenient and unpleasant for a lot of people.
I would argue for everybody.
Yes. Yeah. Like Richard Russell used to say, in a depression, everybody loses, which is, I think, true. I mean, yeah, you can make a lot of money if you're on the right side, but it's so hard. Most of your life is oriented, the real estate you own and your business. Everybody loses.
Your retirement accounts.
Yeah.
Gold, when you get a big downdraft, just like we saw in the financial crisis, gold went down.
Yeah.
I mean, crypto's going to go down. I mean, it's not going to go up.
Exactly. So in a depression, which we are now embarked upon, everybody loses. It's just the winner is the person that loses the least.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm short the stock market. I figure it'll mitigate my other losses. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, the bond market gets ugly. Since the real estate market is built on borrowed money, interest rates go up, people can't afford to buy real estate anymore. So,
do you know how much debt the Chinese real estate market has?
Oh.
I just read this morning.
Whatever, it's going to have a lot of zeros in back of it.
5 trillion.
It's a lot.
It's the GDP of Japan. Isn't that crazy? That's a lot of debt.
It is. So all those people that are deeply in debt in an overpriced real estate market.
And a lot of that is foreign holders, though. So it's like people think, that's China. It's not going to matter. But that's bonds they sold to the international market. Most of it.
Yeah, who knows? Everything is made in China these days. So a major part of the Greater Depression will also be made in China, I think. It's quite...
Makes sense.
I think it does. And then, the U.S. is exporting. That's our major export in the U.S. How long can that go on? I mean, it's been going on a lot longer than, you might think. But maybe at some point the dollar will become a hot potato and people want to dump it. So how will they dump it? Sell the dollar. And what do you buy? Another one of these crappy currencies? Because the reason the dollar is doing well is because it's the best looking horse on the way to the glue factory. So if you get rid of the dollar, you don't want there's even more crappy horses. So you're going to buy something else. Well, what do they do? If foreigners don't want the dollar anymore, the dollars are all going to come back to the U.S. And that means that stuff in the U.S. could, and of course this is an argument about, maybe the stock market will go a lot higher, because at least if you buy shares of reasonable companies, they'll still exist. The dollar, it'll still exist, but it won't be much. So anyway, collapse of the U.S. dollar, that could create real chaos, because most Americans insofar as they have savings, insofar as they have assets, they're dollar-denominated assets. Dollar collapses, Americans get hurt a lot. So they say, well, if your currency goes down, you get to export more. But we don't export anything except for, like a third world country, we export agriculture goods.
Well, weapon systems.
Of course, weapon systems, yeah.
That's, and I think still some oil, but that's decreasing.
That's going to come. That's right. The shale boom, the fracking boom, is going to come to an end because
no new investment.
No new investment, and these people in Washington, they all pretend to be eco freaks, and they hate anything that's productive. So,
well, that's the difference. And Chris McIntosh covered this in his newsletter last week. He's the difference between now and other times where you'd have, the supply, the attempts of markets and financing to meet the demand, is that no one is investing in any of these projects now because all the banks are ESG oriented, so they will not finance them. So there is no, all these mothballed coal mines that have been basically decommissioned over the last several years are not being fired up to meet the demand that's there at all, and there's no money going into it. So you could have a parabolic move in natural gas that makes what's happened already look small. It could get really big because there's just nothing new.
I think there are a lot of businessmen that are seeing the nature of the regime in Washington, and they're saying, I'm not sure I want to make a long-term investment.
I think Atlas is shrugging.
Yeah, absolutely. Rand's novel I think it could turn out to be eerily predictive, and not a moment too soon.
All right, so here's another one I had that was not financial market oriented, but that I think that this gets to the vaccine passports and stuff like that. I think that what's happening in Lithuania, and if you don't know about what's happening in Lithuania, you really need to look it up. Just do some searching, you'll find it. Maybe I'll link to an article, a post from a report, boots on the ground report from somebody who lives there.
Yes.
About what's actually happening there, and it is frightening. It really is frightening.
It actually is.
There's a full deployment of these COVID passports. You can't go into grocery stores. You cannot participate in normal society. You cannot work.
Can't sit in a restaurant.
Yeah, you can't sit. It's shocking. And so now here's the thing: is that you can so that I think first I'll say finish my sentence that Lithuanian situation is going to spread. Now there's a lot of pushback on vaccine mandates now everywhere. Well, that's true, but a lot of that in a lot of places is because they've ignored the whole natural immunity thing, and so the key argument that if you ever watch Tucker Carlson, his whole argument is never about how these vaccine passports are really bad. He's talking about how it's crazy that we're not counting natural immunity. Of course, that's true, if you believe and Rand Paul too. He's always talking about, well, what about natural immunity? But I feel like all of that is like a straw man argument, because eventually I think they're just going to say, okay, you're right, that's unreasonable. So if you can prove you had natural immunity, then, just have your test data in this app, get tested regularly to make sure that the antibodies are still there, and you can go on with normal life.
Well, that's what the Lithuanians are doing now.
Yeah.
If you have the antibodies, you can skate for 2 months.
Exactly, then you have to be retested. The key, though, is it's about the vaccine. Well, this isn't the goal, I don't think.
No.
But a milestone in the big goal is to make sure everyone has a vaccine passport. And how do you get a vaccine passport? It won't be really. That's why it's not really called a vaccine passport. There, it's called an opportunity pass.
Right.
I love the 1984 language. It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's wonderful.
So that's coming, and basically the give is going to be, okay, we acknowledge your natural immunity. We acknowledge that. So get tested, use the app, we know where you are, and you're fine. So that's going to be escalated, and more people are going to be pushed into it, just getting in the app. They want you to just get in the app. That's the goal. And you're going to be you're going to be cut out of normal life if you don't do what you have to do what they say.
And your papers have to be in order. You're constantly going to be inspected. It's like that novel by Ira Levin called This Perfect Day.
Which is a great book.
Great book.
Yeah.
Where any time a citizen of his republic passes one of these little stations, you had to show your documents to the machine.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, people think you can buy these vaccine cards or whatever. No, it's going to be in an app. That's just the way it is. Look at the way it is in Lithuania now. That technology is available here, and it will all be used, and there won't be any way out of it. It's biometrically connected to you. So,
yeah. Well, my friend that just wrote me a letter from Lithuania said
confirmed
that,
it.
yeah, he said you can bribe somebody to fake that you've gotten it, but if you get caught, it's criminal penalties. You're going to jail. You know, it's really draconian.
And it's all temporary, so you can bribe them once, okay, but then they're gonna, but you need a booster, so
Right.
you're gonna have to do it again, and it's gonna get harder and harder to do those bribes. You know, they're gonna scare people out of it. So
I do not want to take a booster every 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is for some dangerous experimental vaccine where there's lots of at least anecdotal evidence that people are getting killed and severely damaged.
yeah, now let me take this break to remind you that we're likely to be deplatformed soon.
Oh,
so
I
go back to the
forgot.
very beginning of the video.
Jesus.
I'm happy you
Oh.
said it because this is what we think. But the bottom line is make sure you sign up on our email list.
I know. YouTube is going to take this down.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't care.
No, I don't. Well,
If we have to not say what we want to say, then it's not worth doing it.
then screw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I think that's going to be everywhere. And the goal, or the milestone
I mean,
goal is to get you on
goddamn
the
it,
passport.
if we self-censor so these assholes don't take us down, then we're defeating the whole...
Yeah. Make them do it.
Yeah,
Fuck them.
yeah, exactly.
I agree 100%. So, okay. So that's what I've got for Lithuania and that the vaccine passport opportunity passes spreading.
Yeah, and my friend Vytenis pointed out that Lithuania is kind of leading the way because as a relatively new EU member, they want to show they're enthusiastic. The leaders of Lithuania are looking for higher positions. I mean, Lithuania is a tiny little country nobody cares about, but they want to move to Brussels and cash in on, you know, the really neat parties and the big payoffs and all that. So he suspects that's why the Lithuanian bureaucrats are so
And there's
enthusiastic.
widespread support among Lithuanians for it. Unbelievably, even though that communism was not long ago. I mean, it was just right around the corner there. But still, there's widespread support for these draconian measures.
Well, especially among the young people, because if you were born...
It's true. And there's a lot of young people.
Yeah, so... Yeah, the situation is fairly hopeless.
But it's coming to your neighborhood.
Yeah, everybody out there is gonna be confronted with this thing one-on-one,
Yep,
personally.
I agree. So I think the biggest thing is you cannot negotiate with it. I think that's the biggest thing. Is like people go, well, if I do this, then it'll be okay. No,
Yeah.
it's all stepping you in a certain direction, getting you to get the vaccine passport. Why? So that you can do something that I don't think will happen in the next 6 months, but will certainly happen within the next year. I think is that the first relief payment will be delivered to your biometrically verified digital wallet from the central bank directly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's all possible when everyone has a biometric wallet. It's not possible before that.
You're right. It all ties in actually to the digital currency and the rest of it. So clearly, the vast majority of people are going to roll over like whipped dogs, and if they really get scared, which most of them will, they'll wet themselves and be completely, you know. But if you have any self-respect, you just can't do that.
You just don't tolerate it.
You just
don't participate.
You just don't. No, you don't. In the meantime, I mean, I think it makes sense to hang out in kind of obscure places so that there's a chance that this might blow over or something, some Deus Ex Machina device could happen. We're not going to return to the before times. That's not going to happen, I don't think. But maybe things will improve. I mean, I'm such an optimist that I can't help thinking that. Deluding myself, I should say.
Yeah, but some things are not coming back. You know, like the travel as it was.
No.
You know, it'll never be back the way it was. It's not going to happen again.
No, absolutely not international travel. The powers that be
They don't want you traveling.
No, they don't. They don't want... Listen, the elite like going to places like St. Mark's Square in Venice but they don't like having all kinds of unwashed tourists jostling them. And, you know, I try to look at things from
Their perspective.
Their perspective, and I said, yeah, if I was one of them, I wouldn't want it either. Well, I'm not one of the elite, but I can do anything I want to do, and by God, if I go to Venice, I guess I'm sympathetic with the elite, so.
Yep. Yep, and I feel like they just made too much progress. They're not backing down at this point, despite the sort of ebb and flows where you feel like things aren't, the pressure's lessening up. If you notice, like, it always feels like that. Over the last 2 years, it's been like, things are getting worse. You can see we're going to get run over by a train. But then there's like the pressure relief. It just seems like, oh, well, you know, they're easing off of this. They're eliminating the mask mandates. They're eliminating these other things. But it's just, anytime you feel like the pressure is being let up, I feel like it's a psychological tool, honestly. Yeah. And that's it. Just to basically take you off your defenses a little bit and to give a little ground. And
I would say that the popularity of the Squid Game, which is the most popular thing on television now, am I right?
On Netflix all around the world, for sure, yep.
I think it's indicative of the way people kind of feel. They kind of feel like we're living in a currently mild version of the Squid Game.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, the way when those things really work well, it's because they've tapped into the zeitgeist. That's what makes them work.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so if you have another one, we can go with that. Otherwise, I can talk
about... I have another one that's worth mentioning? Well, we haven't mentioned, possible military blow-up, which right now, the most likely place seems to be something to do with China, where it's pushing the buttons in Japan and pushing the buttons in all the countries around the South China and East China Seas, where they have claimed those areas in actual contravention to international law as being their own. So that could happen. As we talked about the other day, I think Xi would be an idiot to push it too far. But
he would, but he's talking tough. I mean, he told me about what he said to Australia recently. And he's like, Australia soldiers are going to be the first to die to show that they are, they are wrong to he didn't say that, but someone in the government said something along those lines.
Yeah.
So it's talking tough.
I mean, perhaps Xi is a megalomaniac, and he's thinking, gee, there's only 30 million people in the continent of Australia. There's nothing wrong with Australia that like 300 million Chinese migrants couldn't cure.
Right, and we could really use their natural resources.
We could. It would be excellent to have some more Lebensraum, as it were. I don't know what the word is in Chinese.
Yeah, I think definitely as things sort of fall apart, the acceleration of the collapse sort of happens, that one of the big things is that a clear and present danger must be identified. So an enemy must be very clearly identified. And they sort of set the stage, obviously, for it to be domestic terrorists and parents, talking at school board meetings and anybody who voted for Trump. But I don't know how well that'll stick, when it comes right down to it. And if they need something that everybody can get behind, and so
a foreign enemy is pretty good that way, yeah.
Like another Osama bin Laden or they could never really get people too upset about Putin, but or the North Korean guy.
Is it Kim Il-sung or?
Why am I drawing a blank on that?
Well, I don't know, because it's
Kim Jong-il.
Yeah, it's a dynasty. I mean, it's actually like a kingdom with 3 generations of the same family running the place. So it's easy to get confused. I mean, I can't remember the difference between Louis the IX and Louis the X and Louis the XI in France.
No, nor should you be expected to.
No.
Okay, so I think there's but an enemy, I think, in the next 6 months, it's very possible that they will be identified. Like somebody will point out that this is the bad guy, and you'll hear the drumbeat over and over again about, a particular party that is a problem. And hopefully it's not domestic oriented. That's my biggest worry, frankly, is that it gets turned on the domestic.
Yeah, but the U.S. government is, because of the people that are in charge of it, they know who they don't like, and they're going to use their power to inconvenience, to use a very mild word, the people that they don't like.
I think that's true. The other thing I was thinking is, because of just this cyber attack, just because we've had more of them more recently, and everything seems so fragile, with the electrical grid and stuff like that. And, if you wanted to really hurt people, increase the suffering of Americans. I mean, there's a theory that I've been toying with that, a lot of this, like, that there's an economic warfare happening now, and with China, intentionally cutting certain exports. I mean, Rick Mayberry mentioned that, and we know that they banned all exports of phosphates, right, for fertilizer, was it phosphates?
Well, and of course and they've done this in the past with the rare earth metals, which China really controls that market.
So that's, maybe they need it for their own needs and that's the reason they're doing it, but maybe they're really trying to cause us economic harm, because the argument is that China needs our money. They need they need dollars basically to buy all the inputs that they're for all their manufacturing, and so they need us more than we need them. But I think that's bullshit. I really think that we need them more than they need us. Maybe not more. We need them at least as bad as they need us, because all of our stuff comes from them. I mean,
it does. But if they stop making, shit to fill our storage units and basements and garages, more crap, all those factories are going to go bankrupt, and people will be unemployed.
And they get picked up by the communist government. They actually become real communism instead of this weird fascist thing they have going on now anyway.
That could happen too. It's a potentially chaotic situation. It really is.
So are there any other things that you had on your list you thought were interesting that might happen in the next 6 months?
Nothing new and different and interesting. But I hope some of our listeners who have stayed with us so far will send us some ideas, things that we're not thinking of. I mean, we're not looking at actual black swans, which is to say things that you don't even know they're out there. It's like that moron. He wasn't a moron. He was just a kind of a stupid, evil person. Rumsfeld said, "Well, you got your known unknowns." What did he say?
You have your known knowns. You have your known unknowns, and you have your unknown unknowns.
Black swans are unknown unknowns. So what are they out there that somebody can imagine that we're not thinking of? That it'd be great if we could find an unknown and identify it.
Yeah. If you guys have ideas, leave it in the comments below, or post them in the Telegram channel, because we'd love to hear them, definitely. And I know you have an interview to get to, so we can leave it there.
Yeah, I forget who I've got to talk to on somebody's Skype.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
All right, thanks, Doug.
Okay, thanks, Matt.